Never Mind the Buzzwords is a community event from Jigsaw Better Business. Taking place bi-monthly, its aim is to build a community of businesses and professionals where you can learn, share and connect. It's about going beyond the jargon and coming away from each session with knowledge, tangible tools, tips, strategies, and hopefully an extended network. Each event is focused either on people or a process. In the process sessions, we talk about how we deliver value in our business. Topics here include lean tools and thinking, operational excellence, sustainability, and digital transformation. In the people sessions, we look beyond the process to the who, discussing topics like leadership, teams, culture, and professional development. Never Mind the Buzzwords isn't just an event that you attend, it's an event to participate in. So get involved in the conversation, put your camera on if you can, share your thoughts, ideas or questions in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself. And don't forget to stay in touch. We have a LinkedIn group where we upload resources and recordings from this community. And if you follow Never Mind the Buzzwords on Eventbrite, you'll be notified whenever we post a new event.
So as I say, I know it's not always easy to find time for learning and developing yourself. So that's kind of why we have these sessions, is really just to make it easy and accessible to just get that bit of bite-sized learning, get a few little nuggets of information and come away with some bit of food for thought. We want this group to be fairly flexible and casual and laid back and relaxed. So do feel comfortable. I hope you do feel comfortable asking any questions you might have, sharing any comments into the chat. That's always welcome. I suppose in the spirit of that, feel free to drop a comment as to where you're dialing in from. I am currently in Dublin and the sun is shining, so I'm in a good mood because I'm not that much more advanced than a plant. I need some water and sunlight and I'm fine. So share in the comments where you are dialing in from. And today we are talking, as you know, hopefully about authentic and transformational leadership. So as I say, it's definitely an environment where you can feel comfortable unmuting yourself or popping questions into the chat. We are recording the session and we'll be uploading that recording to our LinkedIn group. So if you're on LinkedIn and you haven't joined that group already, please feel free to. At some stage, Sophie, who is the newest addition to our Jigsaw Better Business team, she'll pop the link into the chat for that LinkedIn group. So you can join it if you haven't already. Let's see some comments as to where people are dialing in from. So yeah, a few people from coming in from Dublin as well. Thank you, Rory. Yeah, I think so too. Plants are great. A few people from Kildare, Waterford City, Belgium. Yeah, exactly, Matthew. Good few of you. Matthias is in from Budapest. I'm always very jealous to hear where you are, Matthias. You're traveling around, being a digital nomad. So that's good for you, people from Meath, Dublin. Okay, excellent. That's brilliant. So we are talking about leadership today, and leadership, as Amy Edmondson would put it, is about harnessing other people's efforts to achieve something that can't be done alone. So making a team greater than the sum of its parts, basically bringing together people, influencing them, motivating them to help them achieve more. So to get us started, I'd like you to just take a moment to think of the best leader that you know. Okay, so it could be, maybe it's your current manager, maybe it's a previous colleague that you had, a former colleague, maybe it's a famous person, a political leader, maybe it's a friend or family member. It doesn't have to be someone that is in a leadership position. It's just basically someone that you would follow, someone that you would listen to. Okay, so have a little think about that and pop into the chat or unmute yourself if you feel comfortable doing so. How do they make you feel? or how did they make you feel when you were around them? So I'd love to just hear some comments there. Okay, Nessa saying inspired. Brilliant. Yeah. Motivated. Okay, fantastic. Positive. Excellent. So again, keep those comments coming in, or if you feel comfortable unmuting yourself, work away. Okay, so who else? We're saying some of the comments: confident, listened to, inspired, empowered, non-judgmental and trustworthy. So that leader, you could put your trust in someone, they're not going to judge you. Orla feels empowered. That's brilliant, Gavin. You're calling someone out in particular, made you feel your worth and part of something, which is amazing. Feeling challenged, yeah, that's brilliant, Declan. It's not all, nice always. It might be a little bit challenging. So yeah, that's great as well. Yeah, I think that balance, where you feel like you're challenged, but they have your back. They're not just sending you off into the unknown. They're kind of going with you a little bit, but believing that you're up for that challenge, which is great. Yeah, so feel free to keep those comments coming in as they come to you. I think, yeah, when we talk about leadership now, it's worth noting that it's probably changed over the years. If I went back to someone 50 years ago and asked them, what does a great leader look like to you? They might have said something a bit different. And there definitely probably would be some similar themes, but there might be, I think we have kind of different expectations for leaders at the moment, which makes sense because the world is different now than it was 50 years ago. In the past, there would have been traits or theories that there are certain traits that make someone a great leader. Like there was the leader kind of leadership trait theory, but actually it doesn't really show that there's any one trait that makes a great leader. It's more about having the skills to sort of adapt to different situations. But I was asking you that question about these great leaders that you've worked with or that you've had experience with, because of that saying or quote that's often attributed to Maya Angelou, who said, people will forget what you said, they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And when we think about leadership, it's, it's sometimes a little bit intangible. It's sometimes a little bit hard to really grasp and get our hands on. So sometimes it's just that kind of a sense or a feeling that someone is a good leader. But a leader's job is quite tricky. They have a lot of balancing acts to do. There's a lot of sort of polarities and opposite ends of the spectrum that they will have to kind of tap into. I've popped this picture up because I just thought it was pretty badass that she's doing it in heels. She's on this tightrope. And I'd say I think a lot of leaders might sometimes feel like they're on a tightrope. They're kind of going on these competing ideals. So as a couple of examples, leaders are expected to be authentic, but they're also expected to be adaptable and flexible. So how do you be true to yourself, but also very agile and adaptable. Showing care for people, but also needing to achieve results. Having confidence as a leader, but then also being humble and having humility, being able to do the big picture thinking versus down into the attention to detail, being able to kind of come up with new ideas, think outside the box, but then also having the risk management abilities. Sometimes they'll be directing, sometimes they'll need to be listening, might need to provide flexibility, sometimes they need to provide structure, all these kind of competing ideals. Sometimes, like I think was Declan mentioned, about feeling challenged, but then also having to support people as well. Leaders, I think, are often expected to be working harder than everyone else, but also to not be doing the work of everyone else. Right. So there's a lot of these challenges, and I call them polarities because, they have those two sides, and it's not a case of pick one or the other. You have to do that balancing act. They're not problems, because say problems have a solution. So sometimes leaders would view these as maybe problems, and that might be kind of hindering their ability, because they're suggesting that there is a solution, there is one correct way, but actually it's more about adapting and flexing between these kind of competing ideals depending on what the situation requires. Okay, I was just having a quick look there, Matthias, what you were saying there about an essential skill when you're being a leader and working with people. You have to be pragmatic, because things will occur that mean you have to change your plans. Yeah, exactly. So it's definitely not an easy job being a leader. And as I said, yeah, we might think of leaders as people in sort of leadership positions in work, but again, it could be in a voluntary capacity. It could be maybe you don't have that formal title, but you're still a leader in some way. Basically, if anyone is following you or listening to you, that's leadership. We all have that personal leadership. So I suppose this is will hopefully be relevant to you regardless of what position you're in. So going into the authentic and transformational leader. So again, as I mentioned, I think that leadership as a concept, it's changed in terms of what people maybe used to think a good leader looked like versus now. Just as an example, there used to be or there still is technically, but there was a theory called the great man theory. And it's basically saying that some people are born with certain attributes and traits that make them a better leader, and that will lead to them being in a position of authority. And whether you believe that leaders are born or made, it still just highlights that in the past, a man was much more likely to be seen as a leader than a woman was. So again, little things that we kind of forget have changed over the years. So this particular framework or kind of model is, I think, quite relevant to the world of work today. Again, as we mentioned, being able to be adaptable and adapting to changing situations. So as an overview, when we think of authentic and transformational leadership, it's someone who, if you're being an authentic leader, it requires you to be self-aware, to be aware and know your own values, to be able to be balanced and fair, to be able to be adaptable, and to make ethical decisions as well. So considering those in your decision making. And the transformational leader is someone who is coaching. Again, when required, you're trying to bring out the best in people by coaching them, building trust with others around you, inspiring them, creating that sort of compelling vision, encouraging innovation. And it's someone who leads by example. Okay, so that's just an overview of what we're talking about. And, we'll go into each of these in a bit more detail. But as you can imagine, when you look at those, this is really suitable to the world of work at the moment, because there is the rapid changes, the uncertain markets, the turbulent conditions. We need people to be innovative and adapting. They need to be continuously developing themselves in order to develop others. So let's start with authenticity. I think that it's about acting in accordance with one's true self, or your one true kind of core values. So to be authentic, you need to have a good understanding of your own identity, of your emotions. It is a quality that can be developed. And so it's just really about, taking the time to reflect, to understand yourself, and to act in a way that's kind of in line or in accordance with your own values, with sort of, whatever ethical standards you hold yourself to. And there is a lot of research out there that would suggest that authenticity in leadership is desirable, and it's effective at achieving positive outcomes, again, in the long term. So when leaders are understanding their own values and beliefs and strengths, they can encourage other people to do the same, encourage their employees to be aware of themselves, their strengths, their values. And that leads to greater employee well-being and job performance and job satisfaction. So valuable, but I think sometimes when we talk about authenticity, we can sometimes make it out like it's more straightforward or simple than it really is. If you just say, oh, just be yourself, you got to be true to yourself, that doesn't really capture the whole picture. It's a little bit more kind of nuanced than that. So there's a couple of dilemmas or challenges when it comes to being authentic. And the first one is kind of what I mentioned there. Which is our true self? How do we know what our true self is? I would behave differently when I'm in work than I would at home. That doesn't mean that, one is real and one is fake. It's just that I'm adapting to the different situations. So we have many different selves. Everyone does. Another challenge is it can sometimes backfire a little bit when you're being really vulnerable, depending on the situation. So say, for example, if you are a leader, maybe you're a quite senior leader and it's a crisis situation, there's a lot of turbulence and uncertainty. As the leader, you might be feeling fearful and you might feel, I don't know what to do here. I'm really struggling. This is, a real problem. Sometimes if you convey that to your team, it could backfire because they may think we need someone who has confidence and is calm and knows what they're doing. They might need that kind of sense of calm, like the leader to sort of lead the way. So it could potentially backfire and they might lose confidence in that leader. They might, perceive them as less effective. So again, we talk about vulnerability and authenticity, but it's not a catch-all that, oh yeah, we just have to tell everyone what we're feeling all the time. Then there's also the dilemmas around being inflexible or not learning. So if you are really clear on who you are, what's your personality preferences, what's your strengths, it can sometimes mean that you're then less willing to evolve or adapt to a situation. If you stick rigidly to your own beliefs and preferences, you might miss new opportunities, new ways of doing things, new learning opportunities. So those are a couple of dilemmas. And it kind of leads us to that question of, well, can feeling like a fake be a sign of growth? I'd love to hear if you have any thoughts on that question, if you pop it into the chat. What do you think of that? Do you think, no, we shouldn't ever really feel like a fake? Do you think, oh yeah, maybe it's a sign that we're learning? So as you're popping those your thoughts on that or anything that I've discussed there, we can have a little chat about how do we get around these kind of dilemmas. So I think when it comes to developing authenticity, it is valuable to pause and reflect and be introspective, but trying to avoid, too much introspection. So one suggestion is that having that reflection and introspection, that should follow action rather than the other way around. So instead of thinking, okay, what do I want to do? What's me acting true to myself? Instead of that, you could act first and then reflect and think about it and think about how you're feeling about that. Because otherwise you can inadvertently just reinforce your old ways of seeing the world and the kind of outdated views. So it's having introspection following action. Another way of, again, developing authenticity and getting around these dilemmas is to have a few different role models who are quite diverse. So we mentioned at the start, think of one leader that inspires you, and that's brilliant, but it's not just a case of copying their style. It's learning from them and having diverse role models. And then also it's just bearing in mind that it's okay to be inconsistent from one day to the next. It's not necessarily being a fake. It's more about being adaptively authentic and kind of experimenting to figure out what's right for the new challenges and circumstances that we face. Just want to come to the chat there. Yeah, so Matthew, you were saying interesting spin on that idea of feeling inadequate. It's all about framing. We can get those sort of imposter syndrome moments, but often that's just showing that we have room to learn. And And then Matthias, I say you were saying, I once had a leader who could deal with things from his personal life, like that it wasn't easy for him to return to work after a period of sick leave. We actually respected him even more due to this, as he said that the hard work we put down was helpful for him, and he expressed his gratitude for this and to company management. Yeah, absolutely. So I definitely think there is, being kind of authentic and being vulnerable can definitely be a way to build trust, because if that manager came in and kind of brushed over it and said, yeah, no, it's fine, everything's fine, you'd kind of be thinking, well, we know it's not fine. So why, what's really going on here? So it can definitely go either way, depending on the situation. And then Nessa, you were saying it can be a sign of growth. Sometimes you have to work through this before acting on it, depending on the circumstances. Mostly, though, it's better to be as authentic as possible. Yeah, I would agree with you there. I think it's going to feel better, in general. But yeah, perfect. So yeah, it's an interesting little kind of question there about, around authenticity and, trying to be as authentic as possible, but also ensuring that we're able to be flexible and able to learn and adapt as well. Okay. So moving along a little bit into transformational leadership. So this is a concept, again, backed up by a lot of research. And it's basically this type of leader. It's someone who can create a compelling vision for the future. They can articulate it in a clear way to others. It kind of encourages other people to follow that vision, expressing confidence and enthusiasm and optimism. And it's aligning with values and making sure they're kind of aligned with ethics as well. And it's broken down into 4 different areas. So we've got idealized influence, inspirational motivation, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. So with idealized influence, again, I'll just give you a brief kind of overview of what each of these areas look like. It's broken down into attributes and behaviors. So the attribute is someone with that charismatic influence. They're able to be consistent around their ethics and their values. And this one is quite closely linked to authenticity. Okay, so again, you're clear on what's most important, your values, your principles, and kind of able to influence others in relation to those. And then the behaviors is, talking about your values and beliefs, considering the moral and ethical consequences of a decision, and having or creating that collective sense of mission. So talking about the goal, the objective that we're working towards. Then we go around to inspirational motivation. And this is that aspect of leadership where you're providing a sense of meaning and challenge. You're able to kind of enthusiastically create a compelling vision for the future. So people are sort of inspired and motivated to follow that vision. Intellectual stimulation is around encouraging innovation and, making use of people's brains, which is what we often have to do in the knowledge economy. So seeking different perspectives, trying to examine critical assumptions, seeing are those appropriate. So able to question things, able to challenge things a little bit, able to maybe challenge the status quo, think outside the box, and encourage others to do the same. And then we've got individualized consideration. And this element of leadership is about treating other people as individuals rather than just members of a group. Okay, so it's about coaching people, again, recognizing their unique strengths, what they can bring to the table and what they want to be doing, what they, how they want to be spending their time. So it's really tapping into that. So when it comes to this, this model of leadership, there is a measurement, the kind of most widely used instrument to measure it is the multi-factor leadership questionnaire, or the MLQ. It's one that we use sometimes with clients. So if you have any questions on it, I can let you know how you can get in touch, just if you're curious about it. So that's transformational leadership. And I want to just open up a poll and see what you think of the kinds of questions that would be from the MLQ that I mentioned there, the questionnaire that's used to assess that authentic and transformational leadership. So a couple of questions should just be up there in front of you in the poll. So have a think about how much do those questions apply to you, or maybe if you're not really in a leadership position, maybe how do they apply to the leaders in your organization? So the first one is, I go beyond self-interest for the good of the group. I talk about my most important values and beliefs. I seek differing perspectives when solving problems. I articulate a compelling vision of the future. And I treat others as individuals rather than as members of a group. Okay, so you can see probably how those questions relate to those four kind of areas within transformational leadership that we just discussed. So I can see if people popping their answers in there. Just coming back to the chat there, I can see, Matthias, you were saying everyone in an organization should have the opportunity to ask questions, challenge the status quo, and come up with ideas to improve things for all. If you don't listen to those around you, how can you otherwise create progress? Yeah, definitely would agree. And we had that quote from Amy Edmondson at the start, who is the kind of psychological safety expert. And it is that creating that environment where people do feel comfortable asking questions, challenging things, like you said there. So yeah, it is. And that a big part of that really comes from the leader. Like, they have a really crucial role to play in terms of how the team is interacting with each other. Okay, brilliant. So I can see the poll, people are popping their answers in there. So feel free, I'll give you another couple of minutes just to pop that in. So on that first one, I go beyond self-interest for the good of the group. Most people are agreeing with that, either somewhat agree or strongly agree. When we talk about the values and beliefs, again, everyone's either agree or strongly agree. I think in all of them, most people are agreeing. So I'll just pop the results up. Okay, so hopefully you can see those in front of you. And again, I think Stuart mentioned this in a different session before, that if we're all showing up here for these kinds of sessions, probably would be people who are interested in developing ourselves and, developing our leadership. So not really surprising to see that most people are agreeing, either somewhat agree or strongly agree with most of these questions. I can see, I think I articulate a compelling vision for the future. That's one that just has a couple of people saying somewhat disagree. And we can see then I treat others as individuals rather than member of a group. Again, the vast majority of people strongly agree with that, and then the rest somewhat agree. So that's brilliant that people are either for themselves or thinking about the leaders in their organization, that they're feeling that leaders are ticking those boxes for being an authentic and transformational leader. So I'll just stop sharing that poll. So again, just to kind of give you an idea of the different items on this questionnaire, the multi-factor leadership questionnaire, the MLQ. It's items like, my leader instills pride in me for being associated with him or her. Again, the idealized influence, my leader specified the importance of having a strong sense of purpose. Inspirational motivation, my leader articulates a compelling vision for the future. Intellectual stimulation, my leader seeks different perspectives when considering a problem. And individualized consideration, my leader spends time teaching and coaching. Okay, so again, that's just to give you a bit of an idea of what it looks like in action and what people would be saying about you if you were an authentic and transformational leader. So, many of us know what great leadership looks like, or we have an idea of, what it feels when you're working with a great leader. But if a lot of us have that kind of concept, why are there not more exceptional leaders? Why is everyone not an amazing leader? what kind of challenges or obstacles do you think get in the way of great leadership? So again, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the chat, or feel free to unmute yourself as well if you feel comfortable doing so. So what kind of challenges get in the way of being able to be the best leader that you can? So it might be something that you've faced personally, or maybe it's something that you've seen other leaders struggling with. So Nessa, yeah, saying egos. Definitely, yeah. Like, to be able to kind of learn and develop, because again, some people will have natural strengths or traits that will help them to be a good leader, but they're going to need to be able to learn and adapt to different situations, so they can't just rely on what comes most naturally. And I think if you have that ego, or if you have that sort of, feeling like I know everything, or I don't need to learn anything, it's going to get in the way of really effective performance, because it'll narrow the amount of situations that you can do really well in. So I think egos is a big one. Yeah. Kelly says too busy. Yeah, too busy kind of doing the work. The work takes over. Maybe it's the firefighting, forgetting the people side of things. It's more just about getting the tasks done. Angela, yeah, really good point. It takes energy and patience, and those aren't infinite resources. We have a limit of our energy and our patience. So it kind of maybe ties in with what Kelly was saying. When you're really busy, it can be difficult to have the energy and patience. Yeah, Nessa, micromanagement, definitely got that sense of wanting to kind of maybe control things. Another great point, Angela, vulnerability, that it does require that, and that can be challenging. Not being aligned at company level. Claire is saying the team is very tight, making it a challenge to lead them somewhere else. Yeah, so maybe if there's a strong culture, it can sometimes be difficult to, guide them in a different direction, because it's, you get comfortable with what you're familiar with. Yeah, it takes an element of responsibility. Gavin, a fish rots from the head down. If a leader's leader is a micromanager, then this becomes a blocker for creativity and speak up culture. Yeah, exactly. So, someone might be a really well-intentioned leader, but if they're getting pressure from above them to act in a certain way, they can be influenced by that or guided by that. One obstacle I've seen coming in the way for great leadership is the management. Management may disagree on leadership styles and focus on tasks rather than the human beings. Management can exist without leadership, but leadership in an organization cannot be distributed without management. Yeah, that's a really, really good point. And yeah, absolutely. I think I really agree with you there. Yeah, like you can be a manager without being a really effective leader. But yeah, it's difficult to be a great leader without management being on board. So those are really good examples, and definitely worth considering as we go through it, because sometimes when we take a step back and look at leadership, it looks, pretty easy, pretty straightforward. But no, there are always going to be a lot of challenges, a lot of obstacles in the way. So how do we go about improving our leadership, right? So tackling those issues of, maybe being really busy or firefighting, or maybe not being so clear or gaining kind of consensus, throughout the organization. When it comes to improving leadership, it depends on where you're starting from. And depending on where you're currently at, depending on your own strengths or preferences or areas for development, there are going to be different starting points. So, some people might want to improve their ability to envision the optimistic, inspiring vision of the future. Or maybe some people are like, no, I have that vision of the future, but I can't really communicate it in an effective way. So it's really about, I think, recognizing what the starting point is, because I think that, leadership, it can be a little bit of a kind of nebulous concept where people have lots of different understandings. And because of that, it can be really valuable to have some sort of framework or assessment. So I mentioned the MLQ, that actually has the 360 option as well, which is where a leader can ask the people that they work with, so their colleagues, their managers, anyone that reports directly to them, to complete an assessment on their behalf. So it's really great for identifying any potential blind spots. It can give you that bit of insight that you wouldn't normally get. So again, it gives you a sort of a language and understanding to better understand leadership. Always really valuable to just pause and reflect, as we mentioned, about kind of introspection and taking the time to pause, because in our busy day-to-day lives, we can jump from one thing to the next without really thinking about, what am I doing, why am I doing it, what's the big picture, or how did others respond when I interacted them in this way. So a way of doing that is setting the intention at the start of the day, and then bring in check-ins with yourself, even just a quick scan. How am I feeling in this moment throughout the day? And then at the end of the day, just reflecting, did I achieve the intention that I set at the start of the day? What went well? Is there anything I would do differently? It might sound a bit onerous, might sound like a bit of a chore, but it is something that the really, high performing leaders build in. And if you do it for a couple of weeks or months, you build up that habit, it becomes more comfortable, might be a little bit more like second nature. So you don't have to think about it as much. So it is something that the great leaders, or the great kind of sports performers, they'll think and they'll reflect and go, okay, learning from experience. I think for any leader, again, it's asking questions that you don't know the answer to and listening to what people have to say. I think it's a kind of a great way to develop leadership, and it's often overlooked. We kind of forget that we can, we kind of get caught up in assuming what other people might be thinking or feeling without actually asking. Having an accountability partner, just getting someone to help you hold yourself accountable. So it could be a coach, like I would work with clients and kind of offer that support and helping people set goals and making progress toward them. Or it could be a colleague, or just someone that you trust that can be honest with you. It could be a case of just telling a colleague, right, I'm working on being a better listener, so just let me know if I seem like I'm not listening, or if I interrupt you. And letting others know that you're working on something can have that added benefit that they'll be more likely to notice when you do make changes, because if they're looking for it, they're more likely to see that change. So those are just, again, kind of high level sort of suggestions, because again, it's very personal. It very much depends on who you are, what you're currently doing. But what else? What other strategies or suggestions could you share that might help people improve leadership? So feel free to pop them into the chat. Yeah. So Angela, yeah, you're saying like asking questions. It kind of goes back to that ego problem. It can be a tricky one, because if you feel, oh, if I ask this question, am I going to look stupid, or am I going to look incompetent? Like I should be someone who knows everything. But I think that when it comes to really effective leadership, it is trying to put that ego on hold and recognize that no leader can have all the answers, because things are constantly changing. The way that we work now is by bringing together the kind of collective power of intelligence, different people's perspectives and experiences. Nessa, I see your comment there just saying, what is that called? Is that was the multi-factor leadership questionnaire, or the MLQ? Oh, perfect. Okay, that's good if that answers your question. So yeah, as I say, like, when it comes to leadership development, it is something that we work with clients to help them with. Like, it's something that I thoroughly enjoy, kind of coaching and training leaders. And just to make you aware as well that some of our offerings are heavily funded through your local enterprise offices. I know there's a few people on the call who maybe have engaged with us and with their Leo in the past. So if it is something that you are interested in, keep an eye out for the email that I'll send after this. So I'll just have a bit of information just in terms of if you did want to have a quick call just to discuss anything that we've discussed here, or discussed any of the kind of funding options. I can have the links to set up a call, just a completely no obligation call, just to chat through if you had any particular challenges or questions that you may be having. So I'll send that to everyone who registered for the session. So I can see another suggestion then coming in, attend workshops arranged by external organizations. Yeah, so Objectivize can be so helpful to develop. Yeah, I'd agree with you, because again, we can get kind of stuck in the, this is the way we do things within our organization. And again, obviously that's important and relevant that your leadership is aligned with your organization's overall strategy, but it can be really valuable to get that external, pair of eyes to look at things and go, why do you do it that way? And kind of challenging that a little bit. So that's brilliant. Thank you so much to everyone for sharing those suggestions. If you have any more, keep them coming. You can feel free, if they come to you, to pop them into the chat. And if you had any other questions about anything that we've discussed, do also put them into the chat or unmute yourself. You're more than welcome to do that and we can discuss it. But I know we're kind of coming towards the end of the session, so I just wanted to give you a heads up for our next couple of sessions. So we have one on the 23rd of November, and some of the lean black belts from Jigsaw will be coming together to discuss Gemba walks. So sharing insight into the value of going to the Gemba, going to where the work is taking place. They'll be sharing their experience, their expertise, sharing some tools as well that you can come away with. Sophie, who I mentioned is our newest addition to the Jigsaw Better Business team, she'll put the link to that event into the chat. And she'll also be putting in the link to the LinkedIn group. I mentioned that we record these sessions and then we upload them. So if you can't make it, or you want to check back in, you can always do that via the LinkedIn group. And then next month, we're kind of coming into the festive season. We're gonna have kind of like a little Christmas party. So we've been doing Never Mind the Buzzwords now since January, and we've learned a lot. We've had some great guests, some great comments, some topics that people have got really into, and I just wanted to kind of take the hour out of December and just sort of recap that, and kind of maybe if say, for example, if you probably haven't joined every single one, there might be ones that you missed. So it's just a way to kind of capture all of that and sort of go over it. So that'll be on the 14th of December as well. So again, Sophie's just going to pop that into the chat as well. There's always plenty of ways to keep in touch. As I say, I'll be sending out an email after the session, and I will just let you know, if you did want to chat about anything we discussed today, there'll be a way of doing that. Again, you can join the LinkedIn group. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Eventbrite, anything else. And if you scan that little QR code, that will just bring you to all the links that you need. So we're coming towards the end of the session today. So I just want to say thank you so much for all your questions and comments. I'll hang on for another little while if anyone else wants to chat about anything further. But if not, I wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time out. As I say, I know it can be difficult to find the time for it. So feel free to pop in any comments or questions. I'll be sharing the recording afterwards. And I hope to see you at our next events on the 23rd November and on the 14th of December. Thanks, everyone.